All right, welcome. Today, we're demystifying a really important guideline, ICH S11. Now, if you're studying how we develop safe medicines for kids, you absolutely need to know this inside and out. We're going to break down exactly what you need to nail for your exams.
Okay, let's jump right in with the big question, the one that really gets to the heart of why this whole guideline even exists. I mean, why all the fuss? Why can't we just take an adult dose, do a little math based on weight, and call it a day?
Well, the answer is simple, but it's absolutely critical. It's because kids are not just miniature adults. Their bodies are constantly growing and changing, and that means their entire physiology is a moving target. This can totally change how a drug works or doesn't work.
So, to get you prepped, here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with why kids aren't small adults. Then, we'll get into the weight of evidence approach. That's a big one. After that, we'll look at how to design a juvenile animal study. We'll also cover some special situations, like pediatric first drugs. And don't worry, we'll wrap it all up with a super handy exam cheat sheet.
All right, let's get into our first section. We really need to unpack this idea because it's the core problem that S11 is built to solve.
So when we say fundamentally different, what are we actually talking about? Well, for starters, major organ systems, think the brain, the liver, the kidneys, they're still under construction. This immaturity messes with a drug's pharmacokinetics, or PK, how the body absorbs, distributes, and gets rid of it. And it also changes the pharmacodynamics, or PD, how the drug actually affects the body. This means you can get totally different side effects. A drug that's perfectly safe for an adult could be dangerous or just plain useless for a child.
Okay, so if just shrinking the dose is out, how in the world do we figure out what safety tests are actually necessary? This is where the star of the show comes in. The weight of evidence approach. It's the central decision-making tool in this whole process.
I want you to think about the weight of evidence approach, or WOA for short, like a detective building a case. You're not looking for one single smoking gun. Instead, you're gathering every single clue you can find. Pharmacology data, existing clinical data, everything. And putting it all together to make a judgment call. Do we have enough to go to trial, or do we need to send the team out for more evidence?
So, how do you build this case? Well, there are a few key factors you always have to look at. First, the patient. How young are they? How long will they be on the drug? Second, the case file. You got to review every scrap of existing data. Third, you analyze the motive. What does the drug actually do? And does it target something important for development? And finally, the evidence. Are there any red flags or known risks for developing organs? Now, listen up, because this is a huge takeaway for your exam. While you look at everything, two factors carry way more weight than the others. The first is the patient's age. The younger the child, the bigger the potential concern. The second is any hint of a problem with developing organs. Those two things are what will really drive the decision on whether more studies are needed. Got it? Good. So what happens if that detective work, that weight of evidence approach, tells us there's a big question mark or a potential risk? Well, that's when you need an action plan. And that plan, more often than not, is a Juvenile Animal Study, or a JS. It's designed to go out and get the answers to the specific questions we have.
And this is super important to remember. A JS isn't some standard cookie-cutter test you just pull off the shelf. No way. It's a completely custom-designed investigation. The entire point is to tailor it to answer the very specific safety questions that popped up during the WOA assessment. This is precision work, not just ticking a box.
So if you're designing one of these, you've got some big decisions to make. You have to pick the right species. You have to time the dosing so the animal's age matches the human developmental stage you're concerned about. You have to make sure the dosing period covers that critical window when an organ is developing. And you pretty much always need a follow-up period after treatment stops, just to see if any effects go away, or if new ones show up late.
And this slide really drives home that whole custom-designed idea. See, every single JAS has what we call core endpoints. These are the basics you always measure: mortality, growth, sexual development, that kind of thing. But then you layer on the additional endpoints, and these are only added if the weight of evidence pointed to a specific concern. So if you're worried about brain development, you add in specific brain tests. If the immune system is a question mark, you add immune function tests. You only measure what the evidence tells you to worry about. Okay, so everything we've talked about so far kind of assumes you've got some adult data to work with. But what happens when you're developing a drug just for kids? When you're starting from square one. Let's dig into those special cases.
This table lays out a really key difference you have to remember.
For a standard drug, you've got adult data, and the WO it tells you if you need 1 JAS. But for a pediatric first or pediatric-only drug, where you have no adult safety data to fall back on, the bar is much higher. In that case, you generally need to do 2 juvenile animal studies, 1 in a rodent and 1 in a non-rodent.
Whew, okay, we have covered a ton of ground, right? From the basic why all the way to the nitty-gritty how. So now, let's boil it all down into the absolute must-know points for your test. Think of this as your official S11 cheat sheet.
Seriously, if you walk away with nothing else, burn these 6 points into your brain. Number 1, kids are not small adults. Number 2, the weight of evidence approach is your main decision-making tool. 3, the most important factors in that decision are the patient's age and potential effects on developing organs. 4, a juvenile animal study is always custom-built. 5, that study is made of core endpoints plus any needed additional ones. And finally, number 6, pediatric first drugs face a tougher challenge, usually requiring 2 JAS.
And that brings us to the big picture question. So what? How does all this help? Well, this isn't just about creating more rules. It's about creating a smarter path. By giving everyone a clear, science-based playbook, S11 makes sure developers are doing the right studies at the right time. And that ultimately means we can get safe, effective, and necessary medicines to kids faster than ever before.